Well, hello, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to the AI for Everyone podcast. My name is Harrison Painter, and this is our first show of 2026, and it's a great one. We are going to be doing just a ton of interviews with AI industry leaders. I already have 10 ready to go. We've got another 20 scheduled. So buckle up for this because we are going to be an AI content machine in 2026. For our first guest, we are honored to have Monica Marquez. She is a leadership and transformation expert with more than 25 years of development, DEI, and organizational change experience. She has led groundbreaking programs at places like Goldman Sachs and Google. I'm pretty sure you've heard of both of those. And she helps professionals re-enter or reinvent their careers, something that's so important heading into 2026 here. Things are changing. And now through her AI platform, we'll explain the name later, she helps leaders integrate AI into their daily workflows, something that we're all trying to figure out and do. And this is not to replace people. This is to rehumanize work. Let's get to the interview. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Harrison. I appreciate it. And thank you for being so generous with your platform and give me a little bit of spotlight today.
I'm fired up. We're going to have a good conversation because we bond on a lot of topics. Number
Yes.
one, we're both very passionate about AI.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
or we both wouldn't be on this podcast.
Right.
Number two, we share the philosophy of humanizing AI.
Yes.
Now, that could mean different things to different people. So, if you would, could you define what you mean by humanizing AI?
Yeah. I mean, for me, AI, true AI adoption at companies, at people in their own businesses, um, can't happen without the human, right? But the problem is that there's misnomers out there that AI is only for tech people or only for, you know, engineers or, IT departments. And the reality is that the AI is just a tool. And people have to use the tool. And so how do you actually teach the tool to people, especially humans who resist change? And so you really got to focus on the people and really starting to focus on the identity of the individual, to leverage AI to get the most out of AI. And so I really think that, AI can't really do much without people, because people are training and teaching the AI, and the AI wouldn't continue to grow if it weren't for humans being involved.
Yeah, I agree. What I teach people is very simple, right? That AI is nothing more than ones and zeros that is
Yep.
put together into information that is then put together into create knowledge. But that's where it stops.
Yes.
Humans have to bring the wisdom to the table, and
Yes.
wisdom is a human trial and error experience trait.
Yes.
AI can't do that. So every single person has an expertise, has something special about them, has something they can bring to the table.
Yes.
They just need to be able to pour that into it, and we need to make sure that we're teaching people that that's the humanizing aspect of pouring into it, so they don't get what everybody's calling AI slop as their
Yes.
output. So what advice could you give people as they approach these tools, and maybe they are frustrated and they're not getting what they want out of them?
Yes. Well, the first thing that I teach people and I talk to people, at Flipwork, my company, we work with organizations to help their people first and foremost shift their identity, right? Of you have to kind of step back and see yourself as, who am I in partnership with AI? And exactly what you said, you've got to step back and actually do some homework and some really tough, deep reflection work of what is your zone of genius? What is that area of expertise that only you can bring? Like you said, the human aspect, the discernment, the lived experience, the expertise that only you would be able to tell in terms of understanding the client, being able to read the room, knowing what your counterpart or your client needs. And so those are the things that we tell people. You first have to understand and reinvent yourself or shift your identity of being a little bit more in partnership, with the technology. And so I always tell people, they're like, yes, but it I get this work slop, or it all of this stuff. And I'm said, you have to treat, I love a play on words, artificial intelligence, you have to treat it like your artificial intern. If you had an intern working for you, you would give them a task, or you would tell them to go do some project or some analysis, but you would never take that first draft of the output that the intern gives you and take it to your client, or take it to your boss, or give it to, pass it on. You would always look at it with discernment and judgment. And then you would tell that intern, you need to tweak this, you need to rewrite this, you need to go change this, you need to, you missed this, here are all the blind spots. You have to do the same thing with AI. And so, in the same way you would transfer knowledge to your intern, you have to transfer knowledge to the AI, to the artificial intern, so that it can start learning and putting the output that you need. So it's one of those things where you have to teach the AI and train the AI to get the outputs that only you, in terms of your authentic intelligence, layer your authentic intelligence on top of that artificial intelligence to make this unique output that is truly going to be much more impactful than you doing it by yourself.
Great points. Now, I want to touch on, because you've got some experience here. You've done some workplace transformation. You've worked with companies like Goldman Sachs, Google, so pretty high level stuff
Hmm.
here. Now, with AI, it's a little bit different as we're moving in, because one thing I'm noticing is the entrepreneurial set, or the startup world, quickly embraces AI.
Oh
Saves me
yes.
money. I can do more. I don't have enterprise funds to spend thousands of dollars on things like bigger companies have.
Hmm.
But yet, at the bigger companies, at least my experience, I'm very interested in what you're hearing. There's a lot of fear either in using it, there's no incentive to use it, or they're just using it to cut corners, even if the company is not, they don't have a policy or anything yet. So you've got this really volatile Wild West environment within corporations that I think we really need to address before something really
Yes.
happens bad.
Yeah, yes, yeah, definitely. I mean, I spent more than 2 decades in corporate. I kind of I cut my teeth at Goldman Sachs and worked there for many, many years. Went to Bank of America, then to Ernst and Young, and to Google. And my entire through line there was always helping the human really navigate complex cultures and complex challenges in there, and making sure that they would be able to thrive, not just survive in these environments. And AI is no different. And part of the reason that I chose to leave corporate and kind of start my own entrepreneurial journey was that I realized I could scale my impact beyond the four walls of one company, because in every single one of those companies that I was at, they all had really great intentions on helping their people upskill and advance. But it's really hard, like you said, in some of these big companies. It's like trying to make elephants run, right? And they're slow to adoption, because there is a lot of fear, or more kind of compliance, and fear around security, and proprietary information, and all of this type of stuff. And so I do think that, like you said, startups are known to be agile, and to be able to pivot and move really quickly. And there are, I would say, pockets in certain companies that can easily or want to do that. But like you said, they have to be much more careful on the way they do it. So I would say that, within the last 16, to 18 months, you've seen more companies put millions of dollars of investing in the AIs in their own, tech stacks, per se, approved tech stacks, where, the enterprise grade chat GPT that is like only their closed environment, and it's not teaching the, broader world, and all those types of things. So some of those things have been addressed, but the same issues happening, Harrison, where the tools are being rolled out, and you'll see the latest headlines where McKinsey came out with a report, I think MIT, others, where they are saying 95% of the AI kind of pilots have failed. And part of it is because they're saying, here's the tool, but then the humans, or even the people organizations, the HR organizations, some of my colleagues are like, we're waiting for IT to tell us what to do with this tool. And IT is saying, we don't know your workflows. We don't know your area of expertise. You're the one who has to use this to. And so there's this gap where no one is teaching the tool. No one is really doing that change management. And the old playbook of how you do change management has changed because AI is disrupting it as well. And so our companies coming in to try to close that gap of like, how do you actually help people step back and start to realize, how do you use AI? And so the change is much slower in these big organizations. But the scary part is that, they've got to shift that cadence and really adopt faster because their competitive peer or somebody is going to, kind of outpace them. So it's one of those things where you're starting to see these big companies pick up. I mean, just last week, my latest edition of III, my newsletter, was talking about Citibank is making all 175,000 employees learn how to prompt. So they're taking prompting courses and, to learn how to prompt AI. And I talk about how that's table stakes. You've got to learn how to go from prompting to being able to repeat prompting and be able to get the same output. Because if you're not careful, if you don't, the prompt, you can get different outcomes. And so you've got to
Right.
learn how to actually create the agentic AI tool. And so it's a little bit of talking about, you've got to like ride the wave or you're going to get crushed by it. And so starting to see the big companies, picking up on it, but they're still not doing a good job of teaching the tool to the people or creating a safe space for people to start experimenting. And that's the key, is that we're creatures of habit. This is the way that I've done work. This is how I've been successful. This is how I've gotten promoted. I didn't use AI. Now you're telling me I have to reinvent the way that I do work. And I'm not quite sure if I'm going to be successful. And so it's that fear of false evidence appearing real, that they don't have any evidence showing that they would be successful using AI.
Great point. I worked at Ford Motor Company for 12 years, so I
Mhm.
understand kind of the mentality of an employee in that system, right? What is their incentive to learn a new tool? Now, I can tell you at Ford, any change that came in, if it ain't broke, why are we going to fix
I
it, right?
think
You have that.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But you also have, okay, but this is going to make your job easier. Well, okay, well, that sounds good until I hear Ford's CEO a couple of weeks ago on TV saying every job is going to be impacted or replaced by AI. We have Walmart's CEO that just came out and said
Yeah.
something very similar. So you're going to teach me to make my job so easy that you replace me. That's what the employee's hearing.
Yeah.
So of course they're worried about embracing it because am I going to work myself out of a job? So I don't think these CEOs are doing themselves a whole lot of
Mm.
favors
Yeah.
right now with their PR team really needs to kind of help with the culture within the company.
Yeah.
But I and a lot of the companies that I work with too, I've noticed they don't really have an AI policy, and I wanna get your opinion on this. They might
Mhm.
just shove something in the employee handbook, but it's not really a dedicated AI policy, or the
Yeah.
policy might be more for, like, the CIO, CTO folks, but not for the general population at the company.
Yes.
That's a cocktail of disaster as well, because whether people want to admit it or not, the employees are using it.
They're using it, whether they get it on their iPhone and are sitting there at their desk getting, they're using it. So you're exactly right. It's that, companies are needing to create the guardrails and really be transparent with the guardrails and being able to say, here's the tech stack that we've approved, and really being open to hear their, teams that are embracing AI to say, hey, this particular tool is trained just on RFPs, or this particular tool is trained on just compliance. Can we get access to it? Can we get enterprise level licenses for it? And so, like you said, it's one of those things of, people are, when they start embracing it and they start seeing, how it can be helpful to them, is that scary part, like, is this going to replace me? And this is where, with Flipwork, we go into companies to really help the people kind of redefine and reimagine and really kind of shift their identity of, how might they work with AI and really understand for themselves, where is their area of genius? What is it that they do the best that AI can't do, right? There are so many things that AI can do, but the other things that it can't do is it doesn't have the lived experience that you have. It doesn't have the empathy, the creativity. It doesn't have the discernment, right? To kind of like give it a sniff test and say, this isn't quite right. This isn't going to fly with my client. I manage the relationship. I know the kind of person they are. I know what they're looking for. Those types of things, really trying to understand where's the high value strategic work that only you can do, that you know that you need to partner with AI to augment that, and really being able to say, let me get rid of all of this other pain point stuff that I do, so that and delegate that to AI, so that I can really focus on the, $10,000 problem, right? And let AI do the $10 task. And so that's where we're trying to get people to say, you do have to reinvent yourself, because if you don't, and you really are the person who's only, doing the administrative stuff, or you only value yourself for that administrative stuff, you are going to get, displaced. And so you need to step back and think about, if you kind of imagine an assembly line and you kind of see where, okay, in the beginning of the assembly line, maybe AI is going to do a lot of the data gathering, the synthesis, all of this type of stuff, and it's going to spit something out that then a human has to come in with discernment. So how do you start to think about, what are the skill sets where maybe I'm not in the front of the line of that assembly line, but I kind of pick myself up and move myself to another area where this is where I can apply my area of expertise, my wisdom, all of this discernment and judgment and lived experience that I have. And so that's what we have to try to tell people, is that, your work is going to change. And so how can you get in front of that and really kind of be part of that change and say, here's how my work, my role, this task can change with AI, because you are kind of partnering with them and saying, this is how it needs to change, right? And taking the old playbook and saying, this doesn't work anymore, and having to rewrite a new playbook. Because the worst mistake that a lot of people are making is they're saying, I'm just going to take my old playbook and like layer AI over it. Those old kind of, what got you here isn't going to get you there. And so that old playbook is really kind of, you've got to just probably, let it rest and build a new playbook in order to get work done. And like you said, the reality is that, yes, jobs are going to change, and AI is changing the workplace faster than people can change. But we have to be careful not to create, like you said, that message that makes people fear AI and not want to adopt it.
So let's talk about that playbook. If you had to give a leader right now in a company, they're an ambassador, they're a champion, they're really fighting for this. What
Uh-huh.
is a three-step playbook for integrating AI responsibly into a company? What would that look like? Three steps.
I say the first step is, start small and experiment. Think of an experiment, just like you would go into the lab, right? You would go into lab, get your team and say, okay, team A or person A, right? If you have a small team, I need you to do this market analysis report. Do it the old way. Team B or person B, I want you to do the same market analysis report, and I want you to leverage AI to do it. And you all have 8 hours in order to do this, right? And at the end of 8 hours, let's compare and contrast the output, which is better. Companies who have done this, and the research has shown, with this, Stanford and MIT, all of these have done these kind of closed experiments. And the 9 times out of 10, the AI product wins, because what happens is person A spent probably 4 or 5 of those hours gathering all the data, going to the sources, putting it all together, doing it very manually. And person B leveraged AI, got it in a matter of 30 minutes, and then had like 7.5 hours to really go deep into the data, to analyze it, to pull out trends, to pull out, to make it more robust, and to bring in some of their kind of authentic genius into that playbook. Where the other person, doing their job the way they used to, did a good job, and the output was still good, but it probably wasn't as polished or as robust or as impactful of a report than the one that the team B did. And so I tell them, pick a workflow, do it, test it, work with it for a little while, compare the outputs. And now you have evidence where you kind of bring people along and they say, oh, here's where it was helpful. But then there might be some things that you point out and you can say, oh, you know what? This is, this, yes, the end product was better, but there are some little idiosyncrasies here that the AI missed that the human caught over here. Now you can blend the two and have a better product. And so it's a little bit of trial and error, experimenting to see how it works. But start small, pick a workflow, pick a task, and then bring people along by showing them the evidence of how this how, what the benefits were and really measure those things. And so starting off small with a task like that, where once you start gaining that confidence and the courage on how to use the AI, you can go to the next workflow and then the next workflow. And before you know it, you have your playbook and your workflows all being innovated and updated leveraging AI.
Couldn't agree more. And it's an inexpensive way to do it, an experiment. I can't tell you how many companies I've walked into, and when you do an audit, you realize how many Salesforce licenses do you have? And
Yeah.
then you realize that half your company's not even using
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Salesforce or the Pipe Drive or whatever platforms, and they've got all this money going out in these monthly fees on a per user basis, but yet you're
Hmm.
gonna freak out over 20 bucks a month or a few hundred a month for an AI tool that really could help that team and that project move along that much faster. So
Yeah, and the truth is that that's happening with the AI tools too. These companies are investing millions, if not billions of dollars in getting enterprise licenses for this tool. And the last, metric that I heard, I was talking to a colleague who works for Microsoft, and they were saying like, you know, all of these licenses for Copilot are out there, and there's only about 47% adoption. So more than half the people who have licenses aren't really leveraging it to do their work. And what I tell people is that that means if you're an early adopter and you start using it, you are going to differentiate yourself and be ahead of half of your peers or colleagues. And if you're worried about getting, the job cut, it's the 47, the 53% who aren't using AI who are probably going to get replaced.
okay, so let's talk just briefly here about measurement. So
Yes.
when you guide companies through AI adoption, this is always the $64,000 question, right? What's the one KPI that actually proves that it's working, that it's helping people? Is there one currently that we could look at? We absolutely should be measuring. We're not measuring. Do we know yet?
I think that's a work in progress. I think what it is that, making sure that people are thinking when they're strategizing and thinking about the AI kind of like, rollout, that it is tied to KPI metrics or to the ROI of how are we going to measure this, right? And what is that measurement? Because it could be different for lots of different companies. But the one thing that I will say that will increase is people have to really think about impact. We've grown up, we've been conditioned to believe you work hard, effort, amount of hours, elbow grease into, a certain thing equals success. AI can really play a trick on people's, psyche, because what used to take you maybe 3 hours to do may take you only 15 minutes to do. And so it starts to question your value, or can you trust the data because it used to take you so long to do, and now, you have all this time. It doesn't mean that now you're only going to work for 15 minutes a day. But what it means is now there's how many 15-minute increments now in those 3 hours could you be, it compounds the impact or the output of that work. And so
Right.
we're trying to, we're working with companies to try to figure out like, how does that measure at the end? Because now what you can say is that in an 8-hour day, somebody might be able to churn out, I don't know, 5 analysis reports. But with AI, they can churn out 20, right? And so at the end of the day, it's like the compounding level of impact, right? The impact is going to be much different, much more different. But you have to make sure that you're aligning all those things to the bottom line. And so that's where it's like every team is going to have to think about, what are your current workflows? What are you doing right now to meet those KPIs, and how might you augment those workflows to increase the impact on that ROI. And so, like you said, it's one of those things where, we're starting to see, or people are starting to see, the benefits of leveraging AI to do that.
Okay, so I have one more question for you before we go to the speed round.
Yeah.
And that's this. So Flipwork, tell me a bit about Flipwork and who is your perfect client? Like what are the type of companies that you're looking for that you work with? Who should be attracted to Flipwork?
Yeah. So flip work, we consider it to be kind of like the human kind of, like operating system, the people operating system, right? And so this is really focusing on an individual, on the human side of it. And so it's a three-pronged approach, right? We really start to focus on the person. We try to help people first shift that mindset and start to see themselves as a kind of AI affluent person who is leveraging AI to get their work done. And once they kind of wrap their brain around, that they are kind of augmenting their talent with AI, then we get them to start thinking about how do you reinvent your work? How do you reinvent the workflows? And then the third part is how do you sustain that change, right? Because we're creatures of habit, and we sometimes that muscle memory was like, great, we used it for a while, and now I'm going to go back and do it the old way. How do you continue to make sure that people are maintaining that change? And that's where we have Flippy, our AI change agent. That's a tool that constantly is working with you on helping you reinvent the way that you do work, right? It might be a daily check-in or a nudge of like, what do you have to accomplish today? How might you accomplish it with AI? How might you do it differently today? And so that's what we do at Flipwork, is where we go into and partner with various enterprises. I mean, we've piloted with, Fortune 50, Fortune 100 companies, but we're seeing our sweet spot really is kind of these, middle market companies that aren't, like you said, the big behemoths like the Goldman and the Googles and everybody have money to invest in build this AI tech stack. But you have some of these smaller companies that don't necessarily have the budgets to bring in all of the AIs and to do these big, long rollouts and trainings. And so we're coming in and helping some of those organizations be a little bit more nimble in doing that, and really getting their people to embrace the AI to help them reinvent the way they do work so that it can impact the bottom line.
So we'll have Monica's domain down here, her newsletter, all that kind of stuff. You'll see it, all the links, and it'll be in the show notes or description as well. Okay, now the speed round. I'm going to ask
Yes.
you 5 questions. Answer
Okay.
either one word or one sentence very quickly. First thing that comes to mind. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right, let's do this. So, AI, friend, foe, or force multiplier?
Definitely a force multiplier.
One daily routine you will not give up no matter what technology evolves.
Definitely centering myself every morning, like just being able to get up, focus, like center myself so that I can make sure that I'm honing my zone of genius to amplify it with technology.
More dangerous, bad data or bad leadership?
Ooh, I would say that's a tough one. But I would say bad data, because the scary part is that the bad data could come from the bad leadership. But that's where the AI can get scary, right? If we don't have a diverse set of people teaching the AI, because AI learns from us. And if we don't have a diverse slate of people teaching the AI, then that's where we train bias into the tool. And so how do we make sure that the data is as unbiased or just as diverse as we need it to be? And that's where I encourage everybody to transfer their knowledge into the tool so that we can make sure that we aren't building tools and technology that are one-sided.
Better AI adoption starts with,
Reinvention. You have to
and,
reinvent who you are, who you think you are, and how you do work in order to adopt it.
and the last one. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
When I say future of work, you say,
I say hybrid work is no longer about working from home, but hybrid work means that you're working with tech.
this has been awesome. Thank
Yes,
you
it
so
has
much.
been. Thank you, Harrison.
And there you have it, folks. That was a very valuable interview. If you found it valuable, please hit that like button, subscribe button, bell notification button. You don't want to miss any of the other interviews I have on tap. Make sure to leave a comment. If you have a question for myself, for Monica, just a general comment, just leave it down there. Let's engage. Let's build out this community. We are all going to need each other as AI continues to move forward. All right, well, that's it for me today. My name is Harrison Painter. This has been the AI for Everyone podcast. And until next time, keep creating, keep innovating, and most importantly, keep up. God bless.
Thanks for listening. I'm glad you stayed. One more spark for the plans you've made. If this show hit, go share the vibe. this tribe. Been blazing trails, now I'm building new.